Welcome to Cedar Publishing and Media, Behind the Scenes. I am Valerie Lovelace, and every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we will be chatting with authors from Cedar Publishing and Media. We'll delve into the ins and outs of their stories, their inspiration, and their experiences. Today, we have Becky Mackintosh, author of Love Boldy. Becky and her family were featured on the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints website, where they shared their story. The video titled The Mackintoshes has over 1.3 million views so far. It's nice to have you with us today, Becky. Welcome.
Thank you for including me on this, inviting me to share a message today.
It's really nice to meet you. Becky, you describe yourself as a devout and dedicated Church of Jesus Christ family, also known as Mormon. You describe how you and your husband diligently raised your children up in the gospel. So how did you end up writing an LGBTQ book?
Well, kind of a long answer to that question, but I will get there as quickly as possible. So we have 7 children, and our son Sean, he's number 3 of the 7 children. And when he was 24 years old, he was a student at BYU Hawaii and had been home from his mission for 3 years. And he sent a private Facebook message to his father and I and told us that he was gay. And this rocked my world. This was something that I had thought about off and on, only because the girls were all chasing him, and he wasn't really pursuing any girls. Mm-hmm. He went on a lot of dates.
He's very handsome.
He is very handsome, and the girls were asking him out, and at first, I just thought, he doesn't want to have a girlfriend before his mission. He's just such a good kid, and he's saving his money for college, but it just wasn't normal to not have him be girl crazy.
Right.
So it did.
So it had crossed your mind.
It had crossed my mind, but to see it in black and white right there in front of me on my computer screen, Mom and Dad, I'm gay, it just made it real. Mm-hmm. and just shook me.
Take us through that day. What happened when you got that message?
Well, it was in the evening, and later when we went back, later when we went back, I could see that the message came through right at 11 p.m. And I'm kind of a number guru. I love consecutive numbers. I love matching numbers. 11 is really significant to me. And so his message came through at 11:11. It was the night before he was leaving to go back to school at BYU Hawaii. And my husband was in the other room, and he came in and he said, "Did you just get that message from Sean?" And my husband was furious. And I said, "Really? Has that just never crossed your mind?" "No, why would that have crossed my mind?" And he was really, really angry. We both called Sean. We didn't know that each other was calling Sean too, and said, "Sean, hurry, get home. Let's talk about this." And he was out saying goodbyes to his friends, because like I said, he was leaving just early that next morning. And he got home as quickly as possible, but it was like at 1:30 in the morning. He had run out of gas on his way home. His phone had died. And so it was quite a process for him even to get home, and all the while knowing that he was having the talk. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure scared to death, the dreaded talk that he had been dreading. And he had been wanting, but also dreading. My husband, who is not a night owl, somehow fell asleep. But I was kind of happy that he had fallen asleep, because I didn't know how he was going to respond, because I saw how he initially responded. Right. And when Sean walked in about 1:30, I just, wrapped my arms around him, told him I loved him, and we sat down on the couch, and then pretty much, what are we going to do about this, Sean?
Yeah.
Let's get you into the doctor. Perhaps your testosterone is out of whack, because I knew boys should like girls, so something must be out of order. Let's get this fixed. And we stayed up till about 4:30 in the morning talking, and I did more talking than I should have. All of a sudden, I was this expert on this subject I knew nothing about. But when I really listened just listened to his story. It was heartbreaking, and of him telling me of the years he just wanted to take his life because he couldn't see any kind of a win-win in the future. He knew this would break our heart. He didn't know how he could stay in the gospel, and he loved the gospel. He had a testimony. He couldn't see how his life with a woman he had dated, and he says, Mom, I've held girls' hands, I've kissed girls, and it makes me ill. I know I can't marry a woman. I've never kissed a guy. I've never even held a guy's hand, but I know I like guys, Mom. I don't know what my future is, but I know I won't be marrying a woman. And so we cried a lot that night. We hugged a lot. I crawled into bed about 4:30. When that happened, my husband woke up, and I told him where I had been and briefly told him the conversation we had, and he got up and was heading to the door, and I said, please be kind. Please be kind.
Because he was already angry before.
Yeah, but he had calmed down, and our story is on the church's website called the Mackintosh Story, and in that my husband talks about how he went down to my son's room and kind of knocked on the door, and when my son opened it, he just threw his arms around him and said, I love you. And that was just the beginning of our journey.
Right.
For 2 years, we didn't really talk about it with anyone else. A few months after coming out to us, Sean came out to his siblings, and then that was about as far as it went. About another year, he was coming out to some of his closest friends. But as far as extended family or really being open about it, that was a 2-year process to us.
So before we talk about him coming out to his siblings, I'm curious, did Sean ever tell you why he felt like that was the night to tell you about it?
Yeah. He said for many, many years, he just thought he would go to the grave with a secret because he didn't want to hurt us. He didn't want anyone to know. But then it started just really weighing on him. Like he felt the very people that he should be able to be open and honest about anything in his life should be his family. And he felt like he was always just hiding something. And the questions he dreaded the most was when people would say, who are you dating, Sean? Are you dating anyone? Oh, your sister, another sister's engaged, and when are you getting married?
He was a return missionary, and that's what people expect, right?
Yes.
That's what they ask when you get home from your mission is, when are you getting married?
He hated coming home at Christmas time. Well, away at school at BYU Hawaii, the pressure was off for dating because he says, everybody, you just went in groups everywhere. And nobody was asking, who are you dating? But he dreaded coming home for Christmas and all the family parties because that's when everyone would say, who are you dating? Who are you dating? And he'd often just make something up and just lie because he wanted the questions to stop. And he was just tired of that. And so he said about a few months before he came home for Christmas, he started to feel like this was the time he needed to come out. He needed to tell his father and I just to lift that weight off his shoulders. And so that's why he did it. And it was the night before he left. So I'm sure he had some anxiety about it that whole 3 weeks he was home for Christmas, trying to find that perfect opportunity and then not wanting to go back to school again with this secret and wanting to talk to us about it before he left. But wise enough to know that the best way to tell us would be in a private message so that we could think about it and he wouldn't have to be there to see our initial reactions, which was very, very wise. He knew us well.
Because it could be potentially painful, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so what happened when he came out to his siblings?
Yeah. So it was about 4 months later, he texted me and said, Mom, is today a good day to tell my siblings? And I said, no, it's April Fool's Day. They're not going to believe you. And he said, oh, I didn't even think about that. And then he said, so when is a good day? And I said, no day is a good day. That would be devastating news. And when I said that, I thought, oh, he'll understand that, and not realizing that broke his heart. And that hurt him deeply. And I wish I could take that back, but I can't. But he crafted an email and sent it off to his siblings, and there was an outpouring of love. One sibling took about 4 days to respond, and that sibling had a tough time. But his siblings just rallied around and said, Sean, we love you no matter what. And that was really important to him and healing to him, and to know, wow, my family knows this about me now. I don't have to feel like I'm hiding something from my family. And at that time too, he wasn't dating. He had never kissed a guy or even held a guy's hand. But he wanted to be open and honest about his orientation.
Okay, so it was easy for some of Sean's siblings to accept, and more difficult for others. Have you spoken with those siblings? Can you detail for me why they struggled with it?
Yeah, so shortly after he sent that email to his siblings, and again, he was over at school in Hawaii, we called a family council to talk about this. And but Sean wasn't part of that because he was away. And at that family council, I told the siblings that we would love Sean. And then I also told them that I had told Sean that if he ever did start dating, that I hoped he would understand that he would not be allowed to bring those dates home, because he had younger siblings and we had grandchildren, and that would just be sending the wrong message, and that would be condoning. And immediately when I said that, several of the siblings said, Mom, that is wrong. You allowed us to bring home our friends and whoever we were dating, so why wouldn't Sean have that same opportunity? You can't do that, Mom, or why would he ever even want to come home? And then another sibling jumped in and said, no, but Mom, you're right. And you've always taught us to stand up for truth and righteousness, and that would be sending the wrong message, and I don't want my children exposed to that and become desensitized. And immediately there was this rift, and you could just feel the tension, and there was this rift, and that was just at the thought of if Sean would date. Thought, wow, okay, well, let's just pray that that scenario doesn't ever even happen, that he's just going to cling to the iron rod, and the dating's not even going to be a possibility, and all will be well. And then about a year and so later, when he did start dating, and I didn't even know he was dating, again, I thought I had created this safe place for him to tell me anything, and he knew I loved him, but still I had not, because he again told me in a text message, and he was home for the end of the spring semester, and he was back home again for a little bit. He sent me a text that said, Mom, can I bring so-and-so to family dinner this Sunday? And I text back and said, is so-and-so a boy or a girl? Because I couldn't tell for sure by the name. And he said, it's a boy, Mom, someone that I've been dating and really care about. And I'd like to bring him to the family dinner. And I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't even know he was dating. Oh, now how do I handle this? And immediately I just said a quick prayer, Heavenly Father, how do I respond? How do I handle this? What do I do? And the answer was just crisp and clear. You love him. You continue to just love him. And I knew that meant including, I argued for a minute, yeah, but this is dating a guy. And the answer was clear. And I sent the text back that said yes. And then I called my husband. And I don't know why I didn't call my husband first, but that's just how it went. But called my husband, and I told him, and his first response was, I hope this doesn't divide the family, because he immediately went back to our family council that had been over, about a year and a half earlier, in the division of just the thought of this. And I sent a text out to all my children and said, this Sunday, Sean will be bringing someone to dinner that he's dating. And the same sibling that I had been on the same page with at that council saying no boyfriend would come was still having a hard time. The response was, well, then I don't think we can come, Mom. Can't bring our children. And so that was the beginning of some family division there. And it was really hard. A lot of tears from my son, a lot of tears from his sibling, a lot of tears from me, and in trying to work through this and understand each other. And I totally understood where this child and her family was coming from, because you want to do what's right for your family and protect them. And they were coming from the same place that I was coming from. And Heavenly Father had just really had softened and opened my heart. But I had to also acknowledge that my child and spouse, that they were doing what they felt was right for their family. And so we had to honor all sides, but it was still really difficult. And as we became more open about this, a couple of years later, very open, so many of the parents and families that reach out to me ask about this family, tell me that their family is divided and how to handle that, and how can they be this perfect, loving family that we are. You know what? No, we went through that division too, and that went on for almost 3 years. So, which was the perfect. Even though that it was not fun and such a trying time, when I speak about it in my book in that chapter, The House Divided, I'm able to really speak from experience of what that was like, the reality of it, and how we worked through that, and how now all, the family walks through the doors and there are no empty chairs at that dinner table. But that was a process and a journey in learning to love and respect one another, and be there for one another wherever they were at, and be respectful of that.
That's quite the feat. I come from a family of 7 children as well, and while we all love each other, we rarely agree on anything. So I'm impressed that your family was able to work that out. So you said in the book, don't step away from the church. You don't turn your back on your LGBTQ child. You embrace both. Love and trust the Lord. Respect your child's agency. And I love, when I read that sentence, I was like, duh, it really spoke to me. Like, we frequently, that is the headbutting, isn't it? Is that we are trying to still parent our adult child, and we're not respecting their agency to choose right or wrong. And then you said it doesn't have to be one choice or the other. We can embrace both, and the Lord calls us to do so. So my question for you is how does He call us to do so?
Right.
How can we embrace both?
Right.
Because your story of your family is kind of like a little miniature version of what's happening in the church, don't you think?
Absolutely.
How people are divided on these opinions, and it's almost like exactly the same opinions that your children were having is what people are arguing about now in the church.
Right. And let me tell you what fueled me to embrace both. So my son had asked me to read the book No More Goodbyes by Carolyn Pearson, and this was 2 years after he had come out. One day when he said to me, Mom, I've read everything you and Dad have ever sent me to read, and I've asked you to read one thing and you haven't read it. I started to read it when he had asked me at the beginning when he came out, but it was a tough read. It was really emotional read, so I had tucked it away. But when he said that to me, I thought, I've got to pull it out, and I've got to read that book before he comes home for Christmas break again. So when I pulled it out and began reading where I'd left off, the first part of the story of the book is story after story of these young men and young women that finally were brave enough to come out to their parents, and then their parents were showing them the door. Out you go, and kicking them out on the street, and so many of them turning to substance abuse or prostitution or anything to survive. That was heartbreaking to me. I thought, how could a parent just turn their back on a child, especially at such a volatile time? Like, how could you do that? I couldn't imagine turning my back on my son. And then the other stories in the book were story after story of finally getting enough courage to come out, and then the parents thinking, wow, how do we reconcile this with our faith? And if there's, my child's not comfortable and doesn't see a place for them in the church, and if there's no place for them, why would I stay in the church? And then, so these parents and whole families were leaving the church. And I thought, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine my life without my faith. And I need both. I can't navigate this without the church. And I believe the church is a church of love, and I wouldn't be living the gospel if I turned my back on my son. Where are the people talking about this? Wait, I'm embracing my son and I'm embracing my faith. And at that time, I just had this strong impression that I needed to come out of my own rhetorical closet and talk about this, the realities of being a Latter-day Saint mother with a gay son, and talk about the realness of it and the positive, talk about it in a positive light, that he was still the same amazing, incredible young man, doing the best he can in life, just like I was trying to do and the rest of us, and that I was not leaving the church. I needed the church, and I was embracing the church. So that's what spearheaded that. And the beginning of that chapter, Elder Del G. Renlund said, "Do I love and support my church, or do I love and support my child who has a same-sex partner? We can do both." And this was taken from a speech that he gave at the Western Regional Conference in 2016. And that's what I felt was a message that I needed to share, was embracing both. And I'm not here to say, do it my way and don't leave the church. I am saying, don't kick your son or daughter out.
Right.
But God knows your story and situations. Turn to him, turn to your Savior, and he will guide and direct you. But my story, the Love Boldly, is our journey and story of embracing our son and embracing our faith and the strength that I have gathered and the peace that I have gathered from doing that.
Wow. And, I was surprised in your book, you reference a lot of talks and quotes from general authorities on this topic. And there's quite a bit of information out there about how they feel about it. And it almost makes me wonder, why are we all so confused? They lay it out pretty clearly, that we're still supposed to love and support our children. So, okay. So then you guys felt inspired or prompted to do a video, right, about your son. So what was that? Tell us what that video was about.
Okay, so my son and I did a video in 2014. So that was at the time when I was reading Carolyn Pearson's book, and I felt that I needed to come out of my own rhetorical closet and talk about being a Latter-day Saint mother with a gay son. And so I felt we needed to be public about this. And so I was FaceTiming with my son, and at that time he was doing an internship in Thailand, actually. And I told him I'd been reading the book, and that this strong impression that I had about becoming public. So I said, Sean, what about when you come home for Christmas if we do a video and we talk about what it was like growing up with this secret alone? And you talk about the years you just wanted to end your life and the realities of that. And I said, I don't know when we'll put it out there, but you're only home at Christmas time, so let's make the video, and then when it feels right, then we'll put it out there. And he was just quiet for a minute and said, wow, that would really be putting me out there, but I can see how that would help a lot of people. Okay, let's do that, Mom.
And who knew at this time?
Yeah, just family and his siblings and just his closest friends.
So not extended family?
Extended family.
So that was really
Yeah.
Really putting him out there then.
Right. So when he came home, we created this video. One of my daughters, she graduated in TV and film production. And so she brought her camera and her lights and microphones. And it was about 10:30 at night. She was leaving the next day to head back to where she lived, which was kind of a ways away. And she said, Mom, are you still wanting to do that video? And so it was 10:30 at night when we set it all up to create this video. And we didn't talk about what we were going to say. We just did it. And it was about a 40-minute video. And then our daughter, she edited it down to about 5 minutes. And it was so good that we said, we need to put this out there now. And at that time, I had a blog that I was writing. It was called Becky Mac's Blog of Mild Chaos. And I just talked about real life. So I said, Sean, I'll write a blog post about this video, and we'll just put it on my blog. And so we did that, and we released it 2 years from the day when he had come out to us, which was January 9th, and we also released it on the blog at 11 p.m., so exactly 2 years from when he had come out to us. And it was scary pushing that public button. But let me back up a little bit. We didn't want extended family and stuff just to hear about it on social media, so we did tell extended family before, a lot of the extended family. And then we met with our bishop and our stake president to let them know that we were doing this. And we showed them the video and read the blog post because I didn't know what the reaction was going to be. I had been the primary president and the young women's president and the stake young women's president, and I was teaching seminary, and I didn't know what the response. I said, you might get people calling you up and saying, what is Sister Mackintosh talking about? Are we supposed to talk about this? You need to keep an eye on her. I didn't know. But I wanted to give them a heads up and also share why I felt it was so important to do this and to talk openly about it. And both of them just gave us their love and support, but it was very scary pushing that public button, and then shared it to Facebook and Twitter and went to bed.
Here's the audio to that video.
Hi, I'm Becky Mackintosh, mother of 7, and I want to share with you about one of my children, Sean, who also goes by Cian. 2 years ago, my son Sean told me that he was gay. This was something that had crossed my mind a number of times as he was growing up. But I didn't want to ever verbalize it or say it out loud and put any energy to it. Hadn't talked about it to my husband, but these were thoughts that often crossed my mind. And he said, Mom, I haven't talked about this with anyone. You're the first person. And that broke my heart to think that my son, at age 24, had kept that to himself.
I have 6 other brothers and sisters. I was raised in the LDS church, and I had a really good childhood. Ever since I was little, I knew there were things different about me. I knew that I liked kids of my same sex. I knew that just like a little girl would have a crush on a little boy in class and vice versa. I didn't ever think I was gay. I just knew that I liked boys, but that when I got older, that would all go away. Like, okay, well, after I do this, I probably won't be gay anymore. Which is funny as that sounds, but you just think like it's gonna go away. Like, I'm not old enough yet, and I'm not gay. It's just I haven't got to that point yet. I hit all these milestones. I went on a mission. I got my eagle. I did all these things, and I was still gay. And we can't expect I'm gonna earn God to do this for me. I'm gonna earn this, because God blesses us however He sees fit, and He knows how. When I was really little, before I had learned about homosexuality or anything, I was just a normal little kid. When I blow out my candles, I'd wish for either a swan or a dinosaur. For some reason, those are the 2 things I wanted. And as I got older, I mean, I was probably only like 7 or 8 years old, and I remember every year after that, when I would blow out my candles, I was no longer wishing for swans or dinosaurs. I was wishing for, please don't let me be gay. I just don't want to be gay. Please don't let me be gay, because I want to live with my Heavenly Father and I want to live with my family. And I had been taught that those weren't possible if I couldn't get rid of this attraction that I had, and I didn't know how. I was taught that homosexuality is just a trial, it's just something of this life, and that after this life, well, that will be gone. I won't be gay anymore. And we need to be careful when we say things like that, because to me, and I'm sure to many other youth, when they hear these things, they've prayed and they've done all these things to take away this attraction that they have, and it hasn't left, it's still there, they're still gay. And when they're told that it's just a trial of this life, that makes them want to kill themselves. And that's how I felt. I felt like if I don't want to shame my family by being gay. I don't want Heavenly Father to know this about me, or to be upfront about this, because He doesn't condone it either. People didn't know this about me. They didn't know that I was going through this hard time. And that's another important thing that I want to get across, is that you don't know what people, kids or adults, are going through, because my family or my friends or no one had any idea what I was contemplating or thinking about or desiring, and these things that were going on. I was a very happy kid on the outside, but on the inside I was just dying all the time. I feel like we're all learning in progress, and I can't hold the church or people I can't judge them, because I don't want them to judge me either, and it's not up to me to judge. Everything has just came together, and Heavenly Father has really cool things for all of us as His children. And it's fine that I'm gay, and it's fine the stages that we go through, because I've grown so much, my family has grown so much, and I've been able to take that growth and give it to others. I just want people to know that life is okay, and don't worry and stress. And if you are in a bad place in your life, and then find someone who you can talk to. And if you don't have anyone you can talk to, then talk to me, because I will listen, and because I've been there, and I don't want anyone ever feeling like they don't have a place to go. I just want this world to be more accepting, and to be just love people. That's what it all comes down to.
I always thought that same-sex attraction was something that other families had to deal with and to learn about. And I'm so very, very grateful that this is something that I've had to learn about, and so grateful for the lessons that it has taught me. I'm just so deeply grateful for Heavenly Father for sending Sean to my home, for teaching me about love and compassion. And it is my prayer that families and everybody in this world, that you'll embrace each other and help each other and support each other. Life is to be enjoyed, not to be endured. And let's all rally around each other and help each other and serve each other and be kind and giving and loving, and make this world a better place. Woke up the next day, and to all these messages coming in and all these shares. I mean, within 24 hours, it had hundreds of shares. I mean, it was crazy. And hundreds of people were reaching out to my son and I from all over the world. I mean, it was crazy how quickly and how far reached it went. And people were just sharing their stories with us and thanking us for sharing our story. And so many were saying, I thought I was the only church member that had same-sex attraction. Not many used the word gay back then. And it just really opened our eyes to really the need out there to hear something that was positive, or somebody speaking about this and in its realness. that Sunday when I went to church, just so many people were coming up to me and saying, I saw your video. Thank you so much. I have a brother, I have a sister, I have an aunt or an uncle. And one person said, your video really touched me. I have a brother that's gay, and he was living with his partner in another state. She says, it's been probably 10 years since I've talked to him. She says, I reached out to him and told him that I loved him. And I think it just kind of gave people permission to love and be kind. But it was so strange to me to think we needed permission to be love and kind, because to me, that's what I felt I had been taught my whole life in the gospel, is to love one another.
It is confusing, isn't it? We're trying to continue following the commandments ourselves, and that word condone, we don't want to condone, right? I think that's kind of what hangs people up on it. So you said most people received it very well, and you were worried about that. Was there any negativity that you received from it?
We didn't receive negativity. I'm sure there was. And my bishop, when I followed up with him, he said he did get people reaching out to him.
Oh.
Nobody, we didn't see that or feel that.
Like kind of tattling on you guys? Or
I wouldn't say that. No, just
like Bishop,
probably just wondering how they were to respond. I don't know. I didn't go into
and obviously he's not going to tell you exactly.
No, but negativity towards us, we didn't see that or feel that.
Things have really changed a lot, though, in the last few decades. There's a lot more resources for families and individuals.
Yes, to live in a time where there are so many resources, because just 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it was completely different.
Right.
I mean, now the church has a website, the Mormon and Gay website, and they're talking about it. They're trying to create a dialogue around that, and giving people permission to, you can talk about it. It's okay. We need to talk about it, because every family is affected. Every family either has a son, daughter, cousin, niece, nephew, aunt, uncle, mom, dad, or a next door neighbor, or a co-worker, or a classmate that is on that spectrum of LGBTQ. So it's something that it's real, and we can no longer just bury our heads in the sand and think it's going to go away, or think that they're choosing this, or to shame them and shun them. Those times are over. We need to just talk about the reality and embrace the two greatest commandments: love God and love thy neighbor, which encompasses kindness.
Right. And it doesn't say anything that is condoning anything that they're doing. And I think there's also these other people, which I am honestly a part of, who are kind of neutral to it. I've known some gay people. I don't have anybody in my direct family that I know of. And I certainly don't have any, like negative feelings towards that community or those people or anything. So I'm kind of just neutral to it. And so reading your book was really eye-opening for me, that you should be careful what you say to people, because you never know what people are going through, and you have to be really kind to people as well. Not that I wasn't being kind, it was just, like I said, I was just neutral. Just wasn't anything, wasn't on my radar,
And we say things that we think we're being kind, but they are listening. They're in those, the primary classes. They're in the young men and young women's classes. They're in our congregations. They're in your social network, your coworkers, and they're not out yet. But they're listening to what you're saying, and they're hypersensitive, and they can hear if you are an ally or someone that would be safe to come out to. And oftentimes we're saying things that we think are kind and nice, and they're really not.
Right. Back in a reference to all the people who approached you and were telling you stories about their siblings and, all these people that they knew and loved that were LGBTQ, do you think that this is perhaps a revolution of a healing within the church? Or do we still have a long way to go with this matter?
Both.
Okay.
Both. I think there's still a long ways to go, and I also think there's been great improvement and a lot of healing, as you mentioned, too. I think we're going in the right direction of the church talking about this more. And, Elder Holland in 2015, he talked about a young man who had come out on his mission and then came home and struggled with his faith, but then years later went back out on his mission. And in conference, he said the words that he had same-sex attraction, but that his attractions did not go away, nor did anyone expect them to. And when Elder Holland said that in 2015, I thought, that line alone will be so healing to so many individuals, the LGBTQ, that are listening and their families. Just to hear Elder Holland over the pulpit at conference talking about the reality of this.
Because like you said earlier on, there was that hope that this is a phase, that this can be medicated or fixed, or that they'll grow out of it, that type of thing. That I think a lot of people feel that way about it. And
then when you come to the reality of this is not a phase and this is not going away, and my son talks about his struggle and wanting to end his life and everything because this wasn't going away, and if he just served this honorable mission, and he was such an obedient, awesome young man and served faithfully in every church calling he had, and he was certain that God would take this away. And then when it came home from his mission, and then you're to the next stage of life where you're to get to date and get married, and he could see, wow, no, I'm still gay, so how is this going to work? The acceptance for himself was the most difficult thing, and also the most, is what helped to heal him, was accepting that this is not going away. This is a reality, and it's not going away. So how am I going to live my life moving forward? And then that's the same thing as a parent or family members. Like when you realize this is not a phase. This is as real for him as for me in my attraction to men. This is real. I didn't choose to be attracted to men. It just always was.
Right.
And it's the same. And this is not going away. This is not changing. When you accept that, then there is this weight lifted. It's like, okay, this is our reality. So now let me ask a different question. How am I going to react? How am I going to respond? How are we going to move forward? And, that's because it's not a phase. And then, it was a journey for us, and then realizing, well, I'm going to move forward with love and trust and faith and inclusion, and best decision I ever made.
I agree. Okay, you claim that your love for your fellow men will not turn the rest of your children gay. It's not contagious. It's not something that you can make happen or keep from happening. It's part of their journey. And you say our job is to love. Can you elaborate on what that means?
Yes. So often people, they don't want their children to associate with somebody that has come out. And so that's in there, in the book to say it's not contagious. It's not something that's going to be passed on. And our job is just to be kind and loving and include people in our circle of friends and in our family circle. It's Christ's and God's job to judge.
You had children who were worried that seeing their brother with a boyfriend would somehow influence their children, right? And so you're asserting that that's not how it works, right?
Right. That's not how it works.
That's not how it works. And actually, you go on later on in the book and talk about how actually those experiences taught them something about being loving and accepting
embracing my son and opening my door to everyone and anyone. And I've met some of the most amazing people in the LGBTQ community that I just love and adore. And as you look at not just the LGBT community or everyone that you pass by on the street as a child of God, like, I don't know, for myself, I just feel this immense love. And to know that they are my brother and sister. I just see people differently now, and my children too. We've opened our home to LGBTQ family home evenings for them and their families. We've been doing that for about 4.5 years now. Have close to 70 people that attend regularly. We, and just opening our doors to getting to know people and hearing their stories, and you just see people as people, and you start to see people through God's eyes, and they're just the beautiful human being that they are, and the gifts and talents that they have to share in the world.
Yeah, because it's really not fair to look at someone who is gay or lesbian or whatever and judge them any differently than your neighbor who's cheating on his wife, or just because it's more in the mainstream, It's just really not fair to say, oh, we have to ostracize this person over here for this sin, but not this one over here, We're not supposed to see people sin like that, are we?
No.
Okay, so you say it seems as though we as fellow church members feel obligated or obliged to call people out on what we think they're doing wrong. And you say that's not helpful. Why is that?
Yeah, so one of the chapters I talk about, pull up the title here. Yeah, one of the chapters I talk about difficult conversations, navigating the landmines of what to say and what not to say. And one of the things that is definitely not helpful is to point out whatever you feel someone is doing wrong. I mean, nobody likes that. Who wants their perceived flaws or sins being pointed out? That only puts wedges in your relationship and puts up walls and creates shaming. And that is never, ever helpful. But just being there for someone, and I know in the case of my son, and he already knows. He grew up in the gospel. He graduated from seminary. He served a mission. He taught people the gospel for 2 years. He knows the gospel inside and out. He doesn't need to be reminded, but remember you should be acting this way, or remember you're supposed to be marrying a woman in the temple. They don't need that. They know that. They just need your love, just to know that you love them for who they are. Everybody needs that. They don't need any flaws or your perceived sins pointed out to them.
One point you received a message from a passed on loved one. Can you tell that story?
Oh, yes. So my sweet mother, when Sean came out to us, my mother was in an assisted living center and not in good health at all. And I didn't feel like she could take the news very well. So when Sean came out to his siblings, and then we started to tell a little bit of our extended family, we did not include my mother in that. And my mother passed away just a few months after Sean had not come out to us. I guess a few months after we had gone public, when we went public with our video.
But she didn't know, right?
She didn't know. No, she didn't know. So she had passed away, and I was driving. I was on my way to go to the mortuary to meet my sisters there to pick out, the casket and all those funeral preparations that you have to do. And as I'm driving there, I'm having this conversation in the car with my mother and saying, okay, Mom, now you know all the family secrets, and about Sean, and I named a few other family secrets. Like, okay, now you know. And then I said, could you just let Sean know how much you love him? And you know, Sean and my mother had a really special bond and a close relationship. I said, will you just let Sean know how much you love him? And then I met up with my sisters, and a few hours had passed, and I'm driving back home, and my phone rings, and I see that it's Sean. So I pull over, and I answer, and Sean says, Mom, I just had to tell you something that happened this morning. He said, I walked to the grocery store, and I was thinking about Ma. That's what he called my mother, his grandmother. He said, I was thinking about Ma, and when I walked into the store, the song that was playing was Sweet Lorraine. And that was a song that had just recently come out on social media, and it went viral and was being played on this intercom at the restaurant. It was written by this man that was in his 80s for a contest, and he had won, and then they had recorded it, and that's what was playing, was Sweet Lorraine. And that was my mother's name, Lorraine. And Sean said, Mom, I had to turn around and go out of the store and sit on the curb and cry, and I was thinking about all these memories came flooding in, and I could just feel her love. I could feel her presence. And I said, so when did this happen? And he said, just a few hours ago. And I knew that was when I was having this conversation with my mother in the car. Will you just let him know how much you love him? So that was really, really special. And really special to Sean, and really special to me, and to know that veil is thin, and that as busy as my mother was on the other side of the veil, that she let her grandson know that she loved him.
That's just so amazing. I love that story so much. Okay, now you said the only time your faith was shaken was with the 2015 change in the handbook that homosexual marriage was considered apostasy. So how did that come about?
Yeah, and I go into that in more detail in the book under wrestling with questions.
And you definitely were not alone. I mean,
yeah,
that was
I know.
Everywhere. Everyone was talking about that.
So at that time, my husband was serving as a bishop of a young single adult ward. And so he received that revision of the handbook the way it was supposed to be received. The stake president had forwarded that to him, and that's how bishops, that's how it was supposed to come down. And my husband called me. I should back up just a tiny bit. That day, I had been working on scrapbooks for my children. I'd been working on them for several weeks. That's what I was making them for Christmas, and I have 7 children, and I had these great big bins of pictures that had accumulated over the years, and I thought, okay, I'm going to put them all into scrapbooks. And so I was spending 10 to 12-hour days trying to get these scrapbooks done. And while I would be working on scrapbooking, I would be listening to Netflix movies. But that day, I thought, I'm going to listen to General Conference talks. So all day long, I had been listening to General Conference talks. And oftentimes, I would be so touched by something that would be said that I'd push pause and I'd jot down what the thoughts that had transpired from hearing the talk, or the name of the talk, so I could go back and listen to it again or print it off. So that had been happening that whole day. And then that afternoon when my husband called and he said, I have to read something to you. I got this email from the stake president and regarding same-gender attraction and a change in the handbook. And he read it to me, and I just felt like I had just been hit right in the gut. Mm-hmm. I just felt sick. I thought, oh, nothing about that feels like love and inclusion. What is this about?
I'll go ahead and read that. So it says, children of a parent living in a same-gender relationship, a natural or adopted child of a parent living in a same-gender relationship, whether the couple is married or cohabitating, may not receive a name and a blessing. A natural or adopted child of a parent living in a same-gender relationship, whether the couple is married or cohabitating, may be baptized and confirmed ordained or recommended for missionary service only as follows. If a mission president or stake president may request approval from the office of the first presidency to baptize and confirm, ordain, or recommend missionary service for a child of a parent who has lived or is living in a same-gender relationship when he is satisfied by personal interviews that both of the following requirements are met, the child accepts and is committed to live the teachings and doctrine of the church, and specifically disavows the practice of same-gender cohabitation and marriage. The child is of legal age and does not live with a parent who has lived or currently lives in a same-gender cohabitation, relationship, or marriage.
I just thought of the pain this would cause Sean and so many in the LGBT community that I knew loved the gospel. And then now they were specifically being called apostate if they married the same gender. And I knew so many that wanted to get married or did get married because they didn't want to just live with somebody or be promiscuous. They wanted to be in a committed relationship, even though it was different than what we are taught is ordained of God. A marriage is between a man and a woman. Mm-hmm. I knew so many of just being called apostate would be very hurtful to them. And I also knew that my son wanted a family, and it wouldn't be in a traditional way. So I immediately just dropped to my knees and said, Heavenly Father, what is this about? This does not feel like love. And immediately I heard this voice in my head that said, remember all the truths that were spoken to you today. You know, I'd listened to those general conference talks all day. Mm-hmm. Remember those truths. Just stay in the boat. Trust me, just stay in the boat. And I just knew, okay, I'm just going to have to love more. I'm just going to have to reach my arms out more because I don't want to lose any more of my LGBTQ friends. And ironically, my husband and we had been asked to speak that night in Provo at an Understanding Same-Gender Attraction meeting. And so just a couple of hours later, I'm in a car heading down to Provo with my husband, and that's when my son Sean called me. Now, the handbook change was being leaked all over Facebook and being shared. Mm-hmm. And so my son called and said, Mom, have you read that? And I told him that yes, I had. And we just cried on the phone. And he said, Mom, I've worked really hard in trying to not hold any ill feelings towards the church, and because I love the gospel. But Mom, this feels like they've drawn a line and saying, we don't want you. And he just cried, and he said, I want to have a family someday, and I want my children to be able to be baptized and to receive the priesthood and to go on a mission if they want to, if that's what they choose. I want them to have those same experiences that their cousins will be having, mm-hmm. and that their friends are having, because I loved growing up in the gospel. And I want them to have that and to think that they can't because of my choices. And he just bawled. And I cried and I cried. And that was really, really tough. And I did watch so many that were so hurt and angry that had their names removed from the church. Mm-hmm. Families that just walked away. And that was hard. That was hard. I understood their pain. And that was hard to see that. And I even know families that lost loved ones, that was like a final straw or blow to them. And so that was hard. And then 3.5 years later, on April 4th, 2018, that the new revision of that, and removing the name apostasy and allowing those children to be baptized. So when that came out, wow, tears of joy on my end. but still a lot of sadness over that in the LGBT community because it brought up all the pain from the 2015. It brought that all back up, and then them trying to reconcile and understand, what was this, if it was so horrible then, why isn't it now, or what? It was just like this high and low that they were trying to navigate and understand. So something that I thought would be so positive was still a negative to so many.
Right.
But I saw it as a positive moving forward for the future. We can't go back and change the hurt and pain that 2015 policy brought to so many. But all we can do is make the future brighter and better, which I believe is to help people know that they are loved and there is a place for them if they want to be there. And we need to do all that we can to make sure that everyone who walks through those doors of our chapels, that they feel loved and included no matter what. Everyone that walks through those doors should feel so much love that they can't wait to come back the next Sunday and bring all their friends because they want them to feel that love too. That's what I envision, and that's what I try to do, because we're not the judge.
Right.
Christ is the judge, and everyone should feel that there is a place for them, however they see fit, and as much or a part of it they want to be. They should feel that they have that.
And do you have any clarity of answers of why that all came about? I mean, it was just, 3 short years where they had that policy. Do you have any clarity on that?
I don't. Some positivity that I saw from that, like I said, I saw a lot of negativity, but the positive that I saw come out of that was that so many people were talking about it. Some were negative, but some were positive. It got the dialogue going, and it made so many people want to love better and include more. So I heard so many stories of people, ward members, reaching out to the ones that they knew would be hurting over this, reaching out to them and telling them how much they love them and inviting them to dinner or taking over nice cards and flowers and saying, I just want you to know that I love you and I care about you and I'm sorry about any pain that this has caused you. You know, I saw that was the positive of hearing the stories of people saying how their bishop immediately called them or came over to their house and just gave them a big hug and said, I want you to know that I love you. Those were heartwarming stories. And so, you know, if that had to happen, to be able to get people talking about it, getting them on their knees to say, what do I do from here? How do I move forward? Or getting people to reach out to others to be more Christ-like and loving, then that was a positive. But again, you can't bring back lives that we lost during that time, or just quickly heal the pain that was brought to so many. But I hope that the positive, there'll continue to be a ripple effect moving forward of that's creating more love and space for diversity.
It didn't really make a lot of sense to me at the time. Like I had mentioned before, I don't have a lot of experience with this, but because I don't know people that are close to me. I do know people, but they're not close in my inner circle of family and friends. And it didn't make a lot of sense at the time why everyone was so upset. I just was not looking at it from a perspective that could give me any insight to that at all. And it makes a lot more sense because these people they don't feel like they've lost their faith, do they? Even though they're gay, even though they may even be married or whatnot, they don't feel like they've lost their faith. But I have been in a position before where I didn't even consider myself inactive. I had reasons that I wasn't going to church regularly, and someone called me inactive, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. It's like, how dare you? I don't feel inactive. I don't feel, disconnected from my faith or from the church or anything. And that's what they were feeling, isn't it?
Right. Because so many, people in the church, their response was, well, why are they so negative? Why are they so hurt? Because through their eyes and perspective, if you were LGBTQ, you wanted nothing to do with the church. You wouldn't want your children to be in the church.
Me and my husband had that exact same conversation. We said, why do they care? Because we didn't realize that there was a large population of people.
They still loved the gospel. There's still so much part of them. And they wanted, so many of them as my son did, want to raise their children still in the church. Allow them to go to primary and mutual and missions if they wanted to, because they like you said, they still, that faith.
They're being torn apart, aren't they? Yes. Because what their heart believes and then kind of what their mind is
the reality of their situation.
It's literally tearing them in two different directions, isn't it?
Yes.
And that explains a lot of, the high suicide rate and that sort of thing
Not
as well,
being able
doesn't
to reconcile that, thinking, if this is so wrong, why won't God take this away?
Right.
And that's why so many, when they return home from their missions, and that has not been taken away. Like, when my son and I did that initial video just in 2014, the majority of the emails that I received began with, I'm a student at BYU. I've been home from my mission 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. I thought this would be taken away. What do I do? How do I reconcile that? And it's something that, and growing up in the church and not being able to reconcile that and hearing that this is not of God.
Right.
So, and God is a God of miracles and healing power. If you just had more faith, if you use the atonement more, this will be taken away.
And there are some of those stories, so it must be even more difficult.
I don't know about that.
You don't?
I don't know any stories.
You don't know how legitimate those stories are?
I don't know. I have personally not met anyone where that has been taken away.
Do you think it's more of a situation where they learn to live with it? Like you were saying, like they may get married to a woman or whatever and get married in the temple and have a successful family, but it doesn't mean that it's taken away.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And I can't speak for them, but I know a lot of couples that either the husband or wife experiences same-sex attraction, that they're married and married in the temple. And beautiful people, but they will still tell you they still have those attractions. They don't go away.
So you have a whole chapter on what we should or shouldn't say if a family or friend comes out to us. What are some of the highlights of that chapter?
So I have a whole chapter on difficult conversations, how to navigate those landmines of what to say and what not to say. And number one is you will never regret listening. You'll never regret trying to understand. Number one, I think, if somebody comes out to you, either your son or daughter or a neighbor or, whoever it is that come out to you, is to thank them for trusting you. You'll never regret saying, I love you, ever. You'll never regret just hugging them and letting them know that you care about them. It's important to keep the lines of communication open. For myself, I would take a step back and think, okay, is my response going to strengthen our relationship or put a wedge and distance us and cause contention? And always responding, from a place of love is always the best way. One thing that they don't want to hear when they come out is, oh, of course, I've suspected all along.
I found that so interesting, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yes, because they have worked really hard to hide this and not have anyone know, and worrying about the way they talk or the way they walk, or and so that's hurtful to say, oh yeah, I've known. No. Avoid comparisons. We kind of already talked about that, comparing them to someone else that you see as a success, somebody that has chosen to stay in the gospel, whether celibate or marrying someone of the opposite sex. So no one wants to be compared to another. Everyone's journey is different, and to respect that and their journey. I end this chapter by saying difficult conversations don't need to be difficult or scary. They can be a meaningful and loving experience between you and your LGBTQ child.
So if there's one thing you wish you had known before all of this happened to you, what is it?
The one thing I wish I had known is that it's going to be okay. You will feel peace and joy. This will be something that you will look at with gratitude for the experience because of your growth. Because at the beginning, I just thought my world was shattered and I couldn't see anything positive. But if I had known that, no, it's okay.
Yeah.
You're going to be okay and your family's going to be okay.
And luckily you handled it well, so that was the outcome for you and your family.
Well, a lot of mistakes too.
Lot of mistakes, but it sounds like you guys have a good family life, that you have a good relationship still. So
yeah, I call it a success as long as my children continue to want to be home, to be together as a family, and my son wanting to be around us and know that he's safe and he's loved. That to me is success.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, what's that golden advice that you would give to a member of the church who's first experiencing a loved one coming out to them?
Yeah. I would say make sure that they know that you love them, and that know that they are the same person that they were 2 minutes before you knew. They're that same person. And just love them and do more listening than speaking. Yeah, foremost, just let them know that you love them and thank them for trusting you, and that you will walk with them, that you'll be on this journey with them, that they can count on you and trust you to be there for them.
And I'm curious now, looking at your cover, how did you come up with that title, Love Boldly?
Oh, interesting. I wish I could take the credit for that, but I was originally approached by Deseret Book to write this book, to share our story in detail and be raw and real and in sharing our story. And the board of directors asked for some suggestions for the book title. So I gave them what I thought were some really good suggestions. And they came back with this. And I loved it.
Wait, hold on. You said Deseret Book, right?
Deseret Book.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. So so it was Deseret Book that reached out to me to write a story, and the board of directors chose that title, Love Boldly, Embracing Your LGBTQ Loved Ones and Your Faith.
So
Perfect.
How did you end up with Cedar Fort?
Okay, yeah, a long story and such a great story. So In 2015, I felt that I needed to write a book because of so many people that were reaching out to us. From the first video that my son and I did, I could see that there was really a need. And so I started writing, but life gets in the way and busy, and it was always just put on the back burner. And then after our story had been, our video was put on the church website, the video that the church created and made, the Mackintosh story. Following that, Deseret Book reached out to us and asked if we would share our story in more detail. And then because they reached out to me, they set me up with this little team that I worked with, and I had deadlines to get so many chapters done by this date, and so that allowed me to say no to other things that were happening in my life, because I know I have to get so many chapters done, I have to get this done, no, I can't do that, I'm sorry. And so I was able to plug along and write the book, And then the book reached the point where it goes to the board of directors for the approval, and then it goes on to the editing, and then it rolls out. It's a very, very long process. And the board decided to put a hold on it for quite some time. An 18-month hold.
Wow.
On the book, or the option to release me from my contract if I felt it needed to come out sooner. They would release me from my contract and I could pitch it to somewhere else. And I prayed about it. I also reached out to some of my LDS author friends to seek their advice, and we were all on the same page that it needed to come out sooner.
Mm-hmm.
And so I opted to for the Deseret book to release me from my contract. And one of the questions I said to them was, can I still keep the title? I love the title. And they said, oh, yes, any help that we've given you and the title, it is all yours. Like, oh, thank you. And then I was hoping, please, whoever picks it up, don't change the title. I love the title. So my author friends suggested that I pitch it to Cedar Fort. And so I did. And so happy that they picked it up. I met with Cedar Fort. I met with Bryce Mortimer, the CEO and president of Cedar Fort, and he just loved the book, loved the idea, loved our story, and just picked it right up. And we just moved forward, getting it out there as quickly as we could. And I'm really happy with the design of the book cover, and happy that they kept that name, because it truly embraces and encompasses what the whole message is about, to love boldly and embrace your LGBTQ loved ones and your faith.
Awesome. Okay, now where can everybody find you on social media?
So I'm all over the place. I'm an open book. Everything's set to public. Nothing's set to private. I'm on Facebook, Becky Mackintosh, Instagram, Twitter, just all over. And just Google me. Hopefully only good things pop up.
I'm sure.
I also have the website, beckymackintosh.com.
Okay, great. And also, your book can be found at cedarfort.com, also Deseret Book and Siegel Book, and Amazon.com as well. Is there anywhere else you can think of?
Yeah. I've been told that a few, the Barnes & Nobles and even Costco may be picking it up and selling it.
Okay, so yeah, and
possibly.
Costco depends on the location, so maybe call ahead if you want to find it there. Okay, and thank you so much for spending the time with me today to talk about this really important topic. I want to get this out everywhere. I don't want any more suicides. We don't want any more hurt feelings or pain from people, especially suicides. That just breaks my heart, that people feel so torn in every direction that they think that that's their only option, is to take their own life. And we need to end that right away. So I really appreciate you writing this book, and I'm glad it came out now, because we need it now, don't we?
Absolutely. And the feedback has been so positive. So that makes me feel really, really good. And I am just raw and real in this book, and our ups and downs and our triumphs, and I hope it really resonates with people and can heal people and strengthen relationships and do a lot of good.
As do I. Thank you, Becky.
Thank you, Valerie.